Okay, now that we have thoroughly discussed the theories on online learning and they can be applied in actual classes, let us now discuss the principles of instructional design. Designing instruction that integrates technology is quite different from the usual instructional design done for traditional learning. Now, Bitham in 2020 listed the following principles: design for learning outcomes, design for learners, design with digital resources and technologies, and design for dialogue or interaction with others. Now, let's talk about design for learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are identifiable change that is anticipated in the learner. So target learning outcomes are specific skills, attitude or perspective, or capability. So when you design for learning outcomes, you ask the question, what is the overall purpose of the learning? Is the purpose clearly defined and shared with learners? Is there a room for some negotiation or variation of purpose? And if so, how does this discussion take place? When designing for learning outcomes, you also ask, what is the main contents, facts, theory, data, processes that needs to be covered on this course? What are the main skills that learners will need to develop on this course? What are the ways in which they can practice these skills? And what new knowledge, skills, capabilities, or attitudes will learners gain? Are these, including digital capabilities, made explicit as a learning outcomes? How will learners know when they have achieved the outcomes, and how well they are doing? What different kinds of feedbacks are available? And designing for learning outcomes also includes consideration on how will learners be assessed, and are the assessment criteria clear and relevant? How could the learning process be captured? Example, using digital services to support reflection and review, sharing, and feedback. Now, the second principle is designing for learners. Addressing issues of access and inclusion and taking into account the diversity of learners in terms of their experiences, approaches, and support requirements. Are the outcomes appropriate for these learners and for all the learners? How could different challenges be introduced? Do learners have choices about how they carry out a task? For example, about the tools they use, the media they prefer, and other people they participate with. Are learners' differences valued? Example, by setting collaborative tasks, by rewarding innovation as well as accuracy? How are support and feedback adapted to individual learners' needs? Are there opportunities to work individually and collaboratively during the activity? How are learners involved in the design process? Example, negotiating over outcomes, tools, and assessed tasks. How will you address differences in learners' digital confidence, capability, and access to digital resources? Where can they signpost them for further support or for further challenge? And third is designing with digital resources and technologies. In choosing tools and resources, it is important to consider their affordances, what the tools and resources are good for, relative to the desired learning outcomes, which are a function of the subject matter and educational level, as well as learner capabilities. You have to ask the question, what resources will learners have access to? What resources do you expect them to access for themselves? Have you ensured that all resources you provide are accessible? What information, media, and data literacies will learners require to access and use these resources? How will this be supported and developed? And how do you expect learners to manage, share, and make use of digital resources? And are these explicit? Now, you also have to ask the question, what devices and services, for example, mobile or web-based, will learners have available for use? What devices and services of their own could they use? How will you address issues of differential access to devices? And how will you use learners' digital access and know-how as a collective resource, example, through group work, informal mentoring, And what support will you and your learners need? Example, IT support, specialist librarian, other professional service to make best use of these technologies. And the fourth, this principle is designed for dialogue or interaction with others. What is the role of the teacher in this activity or subject? How will teacher-learner communication be initiated? How will learners interact with one another? What are the opportunities for peer learning and collaboration? Are there opportunities to bring other people into the learning situation? Example, public audience, experts, fellow learners elsewhere. How are dialogues structured, guided, and supported? How are the rules of academic or professional communication made clear? How can computer-supported communication, example, video, discussion forums, social media, and public blogs, be used to support dialogue? And who will give feedback to learners on their progress, and how will this be communicated? Have you considered how digital technologies could be used to support peer assessment and review? So those are the principles of instructional design for technology-enhanced learning.